My name is Mackenzie. I'm 23 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness and I'm shunned.
All right, Mackenzie. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
So I was born in, I'm a third generation.
Oh, okay. So this goes back a ways.
Mhm.
Do you know anything about how it started in your family way back when?
Okay, so my mom's side, my grandparents, I believe it was their next door neighbors were Jehovah's Witnesses. So they got a knock on their door one day. They were interested. They were handed over to their next door neighbors and they started studying. Um, they got baptized when their oldest daughter was 10. So my mom and my youngest uncle were also born in. And then on my dad's side, that one's really interesting because my grandpa, he's not a Jehovah's Witness, he's an unbeliever, an unbeliever. But my grandma was baptized, but she was always like wishy-washy. They were very inactive growing up. So my dad didn't get baptized, I think, until he was 20, 19 or 20. And he said he didn't do it because he was dating my mom. But mom was like a regular pioneer, very active, and dad was not. And they started dating and then they broke up and then he went through the steps and got baptized. So he kind of like took the lead on that side of the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, people often find a way. Sometimes it's due to relationships or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So for you, then it was all you ever knew was being, one of Jehovah's Witnesses. What did it mean to you as a kid? What was the worldview it gave you?
I was really scared of worldly people.
Yeah.
And I was like, so at that point, even though my dad got baptized late, like my whole family was like gung-ho about the Jehovah's Witnesses. So like my dad's an elder, he's the Kobe. My mom was a regular pioneer when I was younger. My sister followed in their footsteps and was a regular pioneer. So like that was all I knew. And like I was very serious about it. Like even from a very young age, like I was always preaching to people in school. Like I took the this is your own personal territory thing really, really seriously. I remember I don't know if they still do this in school, but they had like the Bible education class that was held like off campus. And obviously I didn't go to that. So I would sit in the library and one of my other classmates didn't go either. And I was studying the Revelation book with like an 8-year-old. No business doing that. I had absolutely
wow,
no business.
You went straight for the Revelation book.
I went straight for the Revelation book, baby. I was all in.
Wow, no like youth book or listening to the great teacher or Bible stories. You're going straight for crazy pictures and things coming down from the heavens and wild prophecies.
Yeah, there was an ulterior motive though, because we were studying that during the Bible study at the time. So I was like, oh, I'm going to study with this girl and get some of my meeting prep done.
Nice. Two birds, one stone. I like it.
Yeah, that's what a third grader should be worrying about, right?
Well, yes, children should be worried about what was it, like flying locusts with weird heads and horns
Gog and
and
Magog and
whatever.
the birds eating all of us when we get murdered. Yeah, all that good stuff.
Yes. Harlots, children should lots of harlots for children.
Yeah, absolutely. Harlots is a big talking point that third graders should be very concerned about.
Absolutely. Yes. So so you obviously you were into this thing. And so let's talk about you touched on school. So let's roll with that for just a second.
Okay.
So what was school like for you? Obviously, like you said, you took it as your own personal territory. You were clearly witnessing to other kids. Did you have friends in school? Was there anything in school for you outside of the, I guess, opportunity to preach?
Yeah, I did have friends. Like I think I had like 3 friends. It was like a pretty tight-knit little group through elementary school. And it wasn't like always me, you know, shoving the Bible down their throat, but a good portion of the time it was. But like, also, I live in Virginia. It's the Bible Belt. Like, so I think most of them were kind of used to that too. Obviously, like, my ideals were different than theirs. Like, you know, they celebrated the holidays and stuff. And I was always the weird little kid, like leaving the classroom and sitting in the hallway while they had parties and stuff like that. But I did have friends.
Okay, good. So did you ever get to participate in school in anything that you enjoyed? Or was it pretty much just go to class and go home, never anything fun?
It was pretty much always just like go to class and go home. There was no extracurricular activities that I was allowed to participate in. I remember one time, because like I love to sing, I love music, like I write a lot, I play guitar, like that's my passion. And I really wanted to join the school chorus. Like that just seemed like so much fun. And I remember I tried out for it, and I was just so excited. And I remember going home and telling my parents, and they were like, you can't do that. You did that. You can't do that. So like when I was accepted, I had to be like, hey, because of religious reasons, like I'm gonna have to turn this down. I can't do it. So that was pretty heartbreaking for a little kid. And then one time I really wanted to be the hall monitor too. And they sent like, which is so dorky, but in elementary school, that's like a big deal. And I wasn't allowed to do that either. So that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I remember that about the hall monitor. And I think there was like, I had an opportunity, and I want to say my parents acted like it was some political office I was taking by being a hall monitor or something. And so I couldn't do it. It was something really just
right?
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was pretty dumb.
Yeah, it's really sad. So you're not, again, it does show how stifled we were, from the things that we actually cared about and that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
We were given an identity, and it didn't include those things.
Mm-hmm.
So then let's talk about your home life a bit. What was life like at home? What was kind of the temperature of the room? How was life in your house, just in general, and then also, I guess, from the witness perspective?
So from the witness perspective, like we were like the perfect family, mom's a regular pioneer, dad's an elder, like a district level speaker, or I guess it's regional now. Sister was a regular pioneer and like serving in the sign language congregation. So from a witness perspective, we were all doing really, really well. But like the actual home life, it was not good. It was not good. My mom has a lot of mental health issues, that were never taken care of. Therapy, I remember, at least when I was younger, like through the organization, was really frowned upon. Just in general, like getting help for your mental health was really frowned upon, because like, why do you need that? You have Jehovah. So based off of that, it became like a really abusive environment, which sucked, because it's like everyone's doing so well in the congregation. So when there's like the warning signs or you try to reach out, nobody believes you. Because like your mom would never do that. She's excellent. She's friendly. She's a regular pioneer. Da, 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 da. So that really sucks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how does it? I mean, I know from my own experience of having a father who was an elder and who was very mentally and emotionally, verbally as well, I guess, abusive. I know how hard it was to watch him be adored by a congregation for who they thought he was, and not who I knew him to be as soon as we left the Kingdom Hall every night or every day, So, how was that for you? What did it bring up for you to watch your family be seen as this beacon of light when you knew that there's a lot of darkness in it?
A lot of resentment, for sure. And just like something like that really starts to break you down, like especially when you're really young and like adults are supposed to be there to help you, and there was no help. Yeah, it was not a good time.
No. It can even start to, and I don't know if this is the case with you, but people I've talked to before in my coaching practice or whatever the case may be, a lot of times people are, when in that environment, sometimes they start to doubt themselves and their own perspective.
Yeah.
Well, everybody else loves mom and dad. Everybody else thinks my family is the best thing in the world. And am I wrong? Am I crazy? Am I the one that's seeing this wrong?
It brought like a lot of guilt. I remember mom a lot of times would like be like, oh, that stuff doesn't happen, or like, I don't remember doing that, or just like, I'm selfish, I'm lazy. She wouldn't have to act this way if I would behave better. Like, I didn't really have a name. I was always just called the rotten kid.
I'm sorry, your internet just cut for just like, you were called the what?
Oh, I was always just called like the rotten kid, but not in like a loving way.
Oh, wow.
So
okay. Well, I don't know how you can be called a rotten kid too loving of a way.
Yeah. But it just, I don't know, like it really gave me a lot of self-doubt and just like, am I doing what's right? Am I crazy? Like, how can I behave in a way? How can I change my personality so that like mom will love me? And maybe stop acting this way. Like after a while, you just kind of start to think it's your fault when like no one will believe you and things keep going south.
Yeah, that's how gaslighting works. That's what narcissists do to other people. That's how it ultimately ends up working. You end up losing yourself and trying to manage everybody else's feelings and keep them happy.
Yeah.
And lose who you are in the process and doubt yourself. That's part of the manipulation and the power struggle in that situation. Did you all? Were you all the family? Then I would assume then you were the family that was studying and at all the meetings and commenting and always out in service and things like that. Is that who you guys were?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing we like definitely lacked in was family worship, because they like got rid of that one midweek meeting, and that was supposed to be like family worship day, but every time we tried to have family worship, it would just result in like a huge argument among all of us, so we just didn't do that. But everything else, like, yeah, always out in service at every meeting. Like, even from a young age, if my parents were sick, they would like get someone to come pick me up and take me to the meeting. And honestly, like, I really loved that because it was a way to escape from the house. Like, the meetings for a long time in the beginning when I was younger were like the only place I had to go. So they were like important to me when I was a kid, but that started to change as I got older, for sure.
Wow. So the meetings were your actual escape. Did you have a lot of friends there? Did you, or I guess what I'll just ask is, how were they your escape? What was it that was an escape by going to the meetings? What did it give you? What did you enjoy about it?
Some socialization, because after fourth grade, I was homeschooled from then on because I was really, really sick as a kid. So I was always like in the hospital and like missing full semesters and stuff. So eventually my mom stopped regular pioneering. She was working full time. My dad was working full time. My sister moved out of the house. So pretty much from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., it was just me and the dogs and my schoolwork. And it was like that all week, every week. So just like, I was like a hyper little chihuahua when it came time to the meetings. Like, I wanted to go just so I could get out of the house and like see people and like have someone to talk to.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lonely, isolated existence to, you said in the fourth grade. So that's like what, 9 years old or so, something like that. Yeah, that's hard. Did your parents pull you out and homeschool you for a certain reason? Was it because you had been sick, or?
Yeah, it was because of my health issues. And they also thought that like maybe it would be better religion wise to like not have me around the temptations of the world. So I was pulled out like for that reason and also for my health. Yeah.
Okay. Um, that's and so you never went back to school then. So from fourth grade on, you were homeschooled?
Yep. Fourth grade
Okay.
on.
I'm always curious about homeschooling for different people. For you, was homeschool something that you took seriously? Did your parents take it seriously? Or was this one of those things where like, we go to the meetings or we read the Bible and that's history class and we go out in service and that's sociology, or like, was it kind of like that or?
They definitely tried to like incorporate the meetings and stuff into my schooling. I think just like for their sake, so they could feel like they were doing something for my education. I did do like a homeschool program. By the time I reached high school, I was too young to do like any of the good programs. So I'm trying to remember. I think I did like American School or something. None of it was online. It was just all textbooks, and you had to like fill out the tests and mail them in and whatever. But towards the end, so like my sister finished all 4 years of high school in 1 year because she was homeschooled for high school and then started regular pioneering when she was 15. So the pressure was on for me to do that too. So it got to the point towards the end of my schooling, like at this point, like my mental health had really taken a toll. Like I was not doing well and my progress was like slowing down. I couldn't focus on anything. Like I was having a bad time. So my mom literally paid for a website that had like all of the cheat sheets for the tests, and just made me like cheat my way through the rest of high school so I could be done at the same time as my sister and start regular pioneering. So education was not like the main concern at all.
Your mom paid for a website so that you could cheat, so that you could get through. So I guess, when did your sister graduate? Was she like 15, 16, something like that?
15. Yeah.
15. So you graduated at 15 too?
16.
16. Slacker.
I know, right? I can't believe it.
Yeah, my goodness.
And the family disappointment.
Oh yes, the black sheep graduated at 16. But also, if you can graduate 4 years of high school in, let's say, 12 months, that doesn't seem like it seems like it might not be the greatest school if you can be able to do that in 12 months.
Yeah, well, and you don't have time to like absorb any of the information. Like you're just kind of rushing through it, and like you can pass the tests like my sister did, but at the end of the day, you're never going to remember all of that. Like
very little of it because there's no time to, and there's no repetition. Oh wow, okay, so you school then for you ended up being something that even the experience you had in like public school was short-lived and then became this isolated homeschooled life. Did that mean that you ended up, so what was your process or path toward baptism? I know that is usually a big deal for people. And just this path that you have seems like a looking for a word, but sped up path to that end goal. Being so young, your family being so zealous, as Jehovah's Witnesses, was that how it went for you?
Absolutely. I got baptized in November. It was November 29th, 2007. So I was 9 years old when I got baptized. Yeah. Which I wanted to. I was really excited about it because, my sister got baptized pretty young. I think she was like 12, and I was the youngest one to get baptized at that assembly. So, I kind of got a shout out at the end of the day, which was really exciting for me because I was 9. But when I stand back and think about it now as an adult, I'm like, why would you let a 9-year-old make a life-altering decision? Like, why would you make a lifelong commitment at 9 years old? Not only that, but like, I was just too young to understand a lot of that stuff. Like, I remember right after I got baptized, my parents being like, okay, you need to fill out the no blood card now, because you need to keep that in your wallet because you're baptized now. I remember sitting at the dining room table asking like what certain things meant, and basically just like signing my life away at 9 years old if something were to happen. And I remember just sitting there sobbing, just like absolutely losing my mind over this.
Oh, wow. So why were you losing your mind over it? What was in your 9-year-old mind, if you can remember?
I just like, I couldn't understand why Jehovah would like rather have me die than like have me get proper medical attention, which, you know, like very, very, very indoctrinated. So I was just kind of like, it doesn't make sense to me, but it's probably the right thing to do. But it was just like, it was really hard to read about that stuff at 9 years old. Like, it was hard to even like comprehend, like, okay, if I get in a horrible car accident tomorrow, I have to die. Like, I can't get a blood transfusion. Like, that's just, it's a lot to sign your life away like that at 9.
It's a lot at 9. Go around to active adult Jehovah's Witnesses and start getting into the nitty gritty of what this means, and watch them point you to jw.org or send you to a Kingdom Ministry or a Watchtower article or something. They don't understand it. They're just doing it too because they think it's the right thing to do, right? You know, so it's just, I can only imagine at 9 the pressure that you must have been under. Also, you know, you said they made an example out of you at the assembly or convention, and like shouted you out. When else as a Jehovah's Witness kid are you ever going to get it shouted out? When are you ever going to be praised for anything other than maybe getting baptized or giving a certain talk or pioneering or something? But it's only Jehovah's Witness activities that you ever receive praise for. And that's one. Baptism is like this first time you actually get to feel special and like you're somebody.
Yeah, for sure. Plus, like, I don't know, again, we were a very active family. So like, we were always on circuit assemblies, and I gave a part on the district convention when I was like 13 about an experience I had in school. And my dad directed the drama one year. So like, we were all in the drama, just like, but those were the only times that I got like a pat on the back or like any recognition for how hard I was working. Because the rest of the time, it's just kind of like, oh, you're pioneering. Why aren't you putting in more hours? Oh, you're commenting at the meeting, but you need to study harder. Like, you can never be good enough. Like, you can never be good enough.
No, you can't. And I think that you just said something that's important. You said it's the only time you got recognition for how hard you worked. What about just recognition for who you are?
Yeah.
What about just recognition for, oh, you're a cool kid, or, you know, I appreciate this part of your personality, or whatever the case may be. It's always recognition for how hard you work. The cult, Jehovah's Witnesses, is a performance-based religion, and it's just about what you do. They don't care who you are.
Yeah, and when it came to like me as a person, all I ever got were critiques. Like, that was, you know, like, I talk too much, I'm too loud at the meetings, I sing too loud at the meetings, always got in trouble for my hair colors. Like, I dyed my hair black one time. That was like the talk of the congregation. Or like, Mackenzie's too fat, now Mackenzie's too thin. Like, it was just, when it came to like me as a person, there was never any recognition or like, hey, you're doing a good job, or like, hey, we love you for who you are. It was just like always dependent on what I was doing in the congregation.
Sure. If you could ever be enough, then you wouldn't need them anymore.
Yeah. And I think that's why it was like so important to me for such a long time. And I tried so hard, because just like, I was having such a bad time in my home life, such a bad time mentally. Like, the only time I got maybe like attention or just like recognition or just just like someone being proud of me was when I was working hard for the organization. Because other than that, the message I generally got was just like, you're a piece of shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we laugh about it because what else are you going to do at this point?
Mm-hmm.
But that's sad that we were all just a piece of shit that needed to be redeemed by controlling our hair color and our weight and the tone of our voice.
Mm-hmm.
And like those aren't even, find that in the Bible. Where is it that those things were to be criticized on the level that they criticize them? It's just that they need to have control, and they think control is love, and they don't know what love really is. None of them do.
Yeah, absolutely. Or that's like another thing that started to really bother me towards the end of my career as a Jehovah's Witness, was just like, the Bible says God isn't partial, and the Bible says God is love. So like, why are you going to tell me that he's going to like look down from the heavens and like see my septum piercing or see my lip ring and be like, oh, I don't love Mackenzie because she's got a piece of metal in her face? Unacceptable. Like that did not make sense to me at all.
Mm-hmm. Which again shows Jehovah's Witnesses are often a reflection of the God that they worship. That their God is very particular, and he kills indiscriminately. And he's a warring God, and very violent, and a jealous God, as they would say. There's just, he's harsh. The God that they worship is very harsh.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like, it makes me so sad thinking about it now, because as I've been out, I've been like trying to explore my spirituality and like kind of see what else is out there. And that is just like relaxing for me. And I just like, I've come to the conclusion that religion and spirituality and all of that, like if that's something you choose to do with your life, that's something that should bring you like peace and make you feel good. And just like being a Jehovah's Witness never made me feel good. Like it was just always guilt, and you got to do more.
Yeah, being a Jehovah's Witness never makes you feel good. It doesn't. It's all about blame and shame.
Yeah.
And it's not very uplifting. Most people are just running this race, hoping to reach a finish line, hoping that they do so and are good enough in doing so that they're not struck down. Yeah. And that's no way to live. That's not living in any kind of freedom. So for yourself, how did things, I guess, progress for you in your teenage years? Or are there any moments that were missing here in your adolescence as you're even maybe before baptism?
Just like home life was really hard. And like I said, I was always kind of trying to find a way to like be a better person or like be less annoying. So like my mom would like me more, and like the congregation would like me more. So when I was 7 or 8, I believe, I started self-harming, because that was a way to kind of like get my feelings out, take stuff out on myself. So then people would wind up liking me more. So that became like a really big part of my life to just kind of like get by. So then it became like, Mackenzie's going to the meetings and like she's pioneering and she's doing amazing, but like I was really, really hurting. And there was a period of time where like my parents did find out and were like, you have like, that was awful. That was again one of the worst days of my life when they found out, because it was just like, we're going to tell the elders, like, you're going to get disfellowship for this. Like, that's disrespecting your body. That's as bad as smoking. And like, why would you do this to us? So I stopped. And then this was when I was like 15, because I was just about to get my learner's permit. I remember that. And mom pulled me into the kitchen one day. And obviously I had been like more irritable and whatever, because you're trying to break this habit. And she was like, can you just start cutting yourself again? Like, you were just a lot easier to deal with when you were a cutter. And that was another thing. Yeah. And that was another thing in which I was like never good enough. because it got to the point where like my mom she would strip me down and she would like point them out and she'd be like, okay, that one's not deep enough. That one's not good enough. You need to do more here if this is going to be an actual issue that you like need help for. And then she would like weigh me at the same time and get after me about my weight. So just like,
you weren't good enough as a cutter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And just like, yeah, and just like the trauma from that's like another big point that I've kind of skimmed over. But in my early teens, I started developing DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. It's something that happens if like you're going through a lot of trauma in your personal life, and it's just kind of the way I always explain it is like my brain goes, oh no, scary, and then turns itself off so I don't have to deal with it. So that's like a big thing that started happening. And obviously no one would get me help. So again, I was like pioneering and doing like amazing in the congregation, but my mental health was going downhill so fast. It was really like, looking back now, I don't know how I survived and how I did that as long as I did.
In DID is often, related to people who have gone through or are going through extreme trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Self-harm, cutting is something that people tend to do. They don't want it to be seen. They do it where it can't be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Or try.
Mm-hmm.
And to have your mom stripping you down, pointing it out. I mean, you couldn't even own that. Mm-hmm. She was trying to own that too.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness.
Yeah, my mom's a control freak. Just like absolutely a control freak.
Yeah, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are.
Mm-hmm.
And what you see there is they view other human beings, particularly children, as property to be managed. You're a problem to be dealt with. You're not a human being with your own feelings.
Yeah.
And to be respected in that way. So they ever get you help, or have you it was just pray more, go to the meetings more, and it'll all be good?
Yeah, and mainly too, it was just like we can't get you help because people can't find out about this, because like, what are people gonna think of our family if they know this is something you're dealing with? Which eventually all of that did wind up coming out, because like it would get to the point where I would start dissociating in car groups. I would start dissociating at the Kingdom Hall, like spent most of my time in the back room during the meetings, just kind of like huddled in a corner, because it got to the point where like no place was a safe place anymore. Because it was just like in my head, I'm like, I gotta hide that this is what's going on. I gotta push it down because, as my mom said, like, what are people gonna think of the family? Or like, I'm gonna get disfellowshipped if they find out that I'm doing this. So I just kind of became like a lone wolf, and I was really struggling.
So your safe place became what, in your head?
Not even that.
Or trying to escape?
That at that point. Trying to escape was like in my head, or whenever I would be like self-harming. But other than that, like no place was really safe. Like car groups weren't safe. The meetings weren't safe. Being at home wasn't safe. Because like at that point, I moved out when I was 16 because my parents were just kind of like, okay, we're done with you. Bye. So I went to live with my sister. Or maybe it was 17. It was 16 or 17. But at that point, I was just like so far gone mentally. Not from like the witnesses, but just like my mental health had gotten so bad, which makes me so angry.
Came from the witnesses.
Yeah, that's true. It just like it makes me so angry that like they say that they love you and like they want the best for you, and like we're just all here trying to make it to the new system. But like I was going downhill that badly and nobody would do anything.
Oh no.
That was
because that would require actual love, and they're more concerned with the appearance of the congregation and not sullying
Yeah.
Jehovah's name and things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't, they just don't know how to be human.
Yeah.
It's a very inhumane thing to do. Um, I'm sure that the elders were of no help. It's just interesting.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, you keep saying no safe place. I literally just released an episode entitled "No Safe Place" yesterday.
Really?
From
I haven't heard that one yet.
a lady named Michelle, and what she went through, and there was
Yeah.
no place for her to turn.
Yeah.
Everything sucked. Everything was
Yeah.
fraught. Everything was abusive. There was nowhere to go
Mm-hmm.
to find peace or love or just
Mm-hmm.
comfort, anything. Um,
Yeah.
and that is
Well,
no
and like,
way to grow up.
yeah. Well, and it got to the point, I had mentioned this to you earlier, where I even, like, I felt so guilty about the cutting because of what my parents had said. So I think when I was 18 or 19, I decided to go to the elders about it, which this was kind of like a dual elder visit because I had been like sexually assaulted by a brother in the congregation. And I kept that under wraps for at least a year. And I had confided in a friend about it, and they were like, you have to go to the elders about this, not because you're going to get in trouble, but like they need to know what that quote unquote brother has been doing. And I remember I was at work, and at the time I worked with my mom. I remember like being on my phone and crying about it and being like, okay, I have to call the elders. And she was like, you can't tell them that. Like, you can't tell them you got sexually assaulted. Like, you didn't say anything about it until now. You probably wanted it. Like, why would you out yourself like that? Which obviously, like, the elders didn't handle it. Like, they listened and acted like they cared about that. But literally, like, that brother got no discipline whatsoever, and next week was giving a talk on the meeting about conducting yourself appropriately with the opposite sex, which blew my mind. And then in that same elders meeting, I decided to talk to them about the self-harm. Like, I was like, I'm already in here, I'm already in the back room, let's just like rip the band-aid off. And they were like, oh, we're so sorry you're going through that. Like, that's something we're not really used to dealing with. We've never had that issue here before, but we're going to go home, do research. We will meet you at this day at this time, and we're going to like give you some comfort. And I was like, oh my God, awesome. Someone's finally listening to me. I go back to the Kingdom Hall to meet with them that time, that day. They forgot. They never showed up. Tried calling them, went to voicemail. It was never brought up again. It was never handled. So that entire meeting, that was like the first time in my entire life I had tried approaching the elders about anything. And you're always told that like the elders are the safe space and like they're going to take care of you. Go to them with any of your problems. And I did. And I was shot down and forgotten. And that was another thing that was just like really, really upsetting and kind of contributed to my mental health crisis that I wound up having.
Sure, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I mean, of course, he was giving a talk about conducting yourself appropriately with the opposite sex. I have an opinion, or I've just seen a lot of times, like my dad, the elders knew that he was not leading our family appropriately. They knew that he was abusive. I was in many, many meetings with the elders where my mom would go to them about him. And then my dad was made to give talks about happy family lives. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Is that not infuriating? Like, I had to leave the meeting. Like, I got up and I walked out. I left. I went home, and that is the first time I had ever done that before. But I was like, that was the first look for me into what this organization really is. And all it is about saving face and looking good. That's all it is.
It is. It is. In other words, so there might be some rumors out there that this guy was inappropriate. So let's make him give a talk on what's appropriate. My dad, There's rumors out there about my dad as an elder and how he is with his family. So let's have him give a talk that rehabilitates his image. Or
Yeah.
my dad was literally dying because he did not take care of himself and was so neglectful toward his own
Yeah.
body and had always been.
Mm-hmm.
And they made him the head of first aid at the conventions. And I was like, you gotta be shitting
You
me.
have to be
This
kidding.
guy
Oh my
does
God.
not care about himself. He never has. He has been non-compliant with every doctor that has ever talked to him. And you put him, someone completely medically unqualified, as the head of first aid.
That's
And now
insane.
here you are, you've gone to the elders, and this guy is giving this talk.
Yeah.
Like that, come on.
That was the beginning of the end for me. Like that absolutely was. I don't think I've ever been that mad in my entire life.
No, at least we were kids, so we couldn't leave while dad was giving a talk about happy family life.
Yeah.
My mom would walk out of the auditorium, but we weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how it must have felt, the relief just to get away from that place.
Yeah.
Because this is just wild, to see him up there giving that talk, but also just the trauma that created. I'm just of the belief that there's nothing Jehovah's Witnesses can't make worse.
Oh, actually. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
They can make anything worse.
They really can. Like that just, like I remember they announced the name of the talk. And then this brother got on stage. And I remember just like my heart dropped to my stomach and like my hands and feet just went like completely numb. Like it was that kind of response. And I don't know if it was panic or anger or a mixture of the two, but I left. I wish I could say I left and never went back, but that's not what happened. But I did leave that meeting. Yeah.
Did a lot of us wish we could have said that earlier on, but it takes time to work your way through these things because Jehovah's Witnesses are just masters of manipulation, and they've set up a whole thing there that it's hard to get out of.
Yeah, even today, like I was listening to NPR and they said something about peace and security, and like my stomach dropped, and I was like,
it's a programmed response.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever, so that brother was never dealt with in any way that you know of, or nothing was
not
ever
any way that I know of?
And obviously you talked kind of about your mom in these situations. Was your dad supportive at all? Was he trying, like, I don't know, I don't have kids.
Yeah.
If I was a dad and somebody did that to my little girl, I would have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Was he supportive in any way, or was he kind of kept in the dark? How did he fit in?
My dad, I love my dad. I miss him more than anything. So he worked out of the house and mom telecommuted from home. So a lot of what was going on when we were kids, dad just wasn't aware of. And I remember, like, I'm sure I'll get to this, but there was a point I was in a rehab facility and dad visited me. And that is the third time in my life I have ever seen my dad cry, because he was like, I feel like a horrible father, because all this time I thought your mom was a good mom. Like, I didn't really realize what was going on. Like, I knew you guys didn't get along, but I didn't realize all of this was happening. So like my dad really loved me. And when he found out what happened with that brother, I remember him saying, I want to rip his head off and dribble it like a basketball. Which obviously he couldn't do that because, like, one, that's illegal, and two, he's an elder. So like sure. He cared, but at the same time, like, he still had to save face because that's what we're programmed to do as witnesses. But even now that, like, I'm disfellowshipped, my dad there have been times where he has like communicated with me a little bit. You know, he always tells me he loves me and everything, but then my mom comes into the picture and is like, meh, meh, meh. And that gets cut off immediately.
Gotcha.
But I love my dad. I love that man. I hope he wakes up someday. I really, really do.
Yeah, maybe. Well, and I think you see there's being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is complex.
Yeah.
People can have their base personalities, and maybe your dad is a really sweet guy who cares underneath, but
Yeah.
he, over top of that is piled all of this cult stuff, and he can't quite manage to get through it.
Oh, it's really sad. It just like breaks my heart. I think of like the expression, the truth will set you free. And it just like, it's
actual
like,
truth will, but not the truth.
Yeah, like the actual truth will, but I think of it in like, I hope the witnesses set him free, and I hope learning the truth about the witnesses will set him free. I always think it's so ironic that like they use that term so much, because I'm like, the truth did set me free, just not in the way you guys were saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of that stuff going on. That's part of the gaslighting. So we skipped up to where you had approached the elders, and you had told them what had happened with that brother. And it sounds like they were more interested in the whole self-harming piece than they were the other person actively harming other people piece.
Yeah.
So I know they stood you up, which is just insane. I mean, you would think that at least
heard of that happening before.
I've never heard of that. Yeah. I mean, it probably has, but and I'm assuming, so it was multiple brothers. Was it 3?
It was 2 elders and a ministerial servant.
Okay. So you would assume that one of the 3 would remember it, right?
You'd think. But I will say, like, I loved the elders in my hall. Lovely people. None of them are competent. Like, they are not competent people. I remember there was one brother, we always used to joke when he would have a part that it seemed like someone just like walked up to some guy on the street and was like, hey, have you heard of Jehovah's Witnesses? How would you like to conduct their meeting tonight? Like, that was like the vibe in my Kingdom Hall, was just like, no one knew what they were doing ever at all. Well, so disorganized.
I would just question their loveliness to some degree, because they just sat with a young woman in front of them who was sexually assaulted. And what they cared about was that she is self-harmed, and they didn't really even care about that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that they're horrible people.
Yeah.
But they clearly are not, they're also not lovely.
Yeah. Maybe lovely is the wrong word to use, but I will say, I think a lot of the people I grew up around have the potential to be very good people, but they're just so deeply rooted and indoctrinated that like that kind of takes over. So like, lovely people to the most part, super, super indoctrinated, which makes them do things that are not lovely. Yeah,
absolutely. There are lots of people in the organization that have good hearts and think they're doing what is right. There are other people who get off on the power and appreciate that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, I think that was my mom, honestly, because like there's a lot of these people where if it weren't for the witnesses, like they wouldn't have anything.
Like, they'd be nobody.
That's all they have. That's the only taste of power they'll ever have. Like, I think that has a lot to do with it for a lot of people.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and it's hard to have much more power than an elder in a congregation.
Yeah,
got quite a bit of power over people's lives there, and that with great power comes great responsibility. And sadly, they often drop the ball and don't wield that responsibility in a helpful way. That's not to condemn all elders or anything like that. They're indoctrinated. They're cult victims too. They're caught up in a bad situation. This is not. Nobody wins here. This is a toxic situation through and through. but it's sad that they absolutely did fail you.
Yeah.
They absolutely failed you in that instance.
Yeah.
So you said it was never even brought up again. So I guess just did all of that just disappear?
Yeah.
And where do you, I guess you said you were 17, 18.
Mm-hmm.
Where does 17, 18-year-old Mackenzie go with these feelings and this trauma after no one is helping her?
Nowhere. It just built up. I did have like a therapist for a brief amount of time. Against like what I was advised to do. I went and got a therapist. But she was kind of insane. We only ever like talked about her and her life. Like I was literally paying to sit with this woman for an hour while she ragged on her husband. Like that's all it was. So,
that is inappropriate.
Yeah. So I pretty much gave up on that. And it got to the point where like, I remember I got really sick again when I was like 18, 19. So I was on prednisone, which is like a steroid that's supposed to help with your breathing, because all of the illnesses I've had have been like lung related. Because like my lungs collapsed when I was younger. So sometimes that just gets like, there's a lot of scar tissue and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, so I was put on prednisone, which if you already have psychological issues, will aggravate those to like the worst extent. And I was on it for probably 6 months. So that's when things really started to go downhill. Like I was hallucinating. I would go to the meetings and I was just like freaking out because I was seeing like bugs all over the walls and like everyone was out to get me. And I was just like so in my head and there was nowhere to go with all of the trauma I had experienced and now like this mental health crisis that I'm experiencing. So I wish I could say that like I found a place to go after the elders forgot about me, but things just got significantly worse. Like that was the beginning of the end, both for like my mental health and also for me being a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, there's not a lot of I'm sorry that the medication that was supposed to help seemed to make things worse in that instance. I couldn't help but think, I was just struck by, you talk about when you were a kid, your lungs collapsed. And you had the scar tissue and breathing can be a problem for you, I guess. And yet you were chastised for singing too loud at the Kingdom Hall. I think anyone who knows that story would tell you to belt it out and to use those lungs for everything that you can, because that's pretty awesome. And the fact that you were shamed for that, come on, you're a person who's maybe, I don't know the history, but lucky to be breathing. And so if that's the, and then to be able to, even as a Jehovah's Witness, which I am totally not, if I was one, to know your story, let that sister sing. That's a beautiful thing. What a beautiful melody to Jehovah, or whatever they would say. But like that you were using your voice in that way as a person and your lungs in that capacity to belt it out. Goodness, again, they can take anything and make it worse. Because that should have been a beautiful expression and not turned into something like that. So I'm sorry that was used against you. So now you're in this mental health crisis, literally, again, no safe place. Everywhere that you have turned for help is not leading you to help. So what do you do? Where do you go from there?
It was a struggle. It really was. I remember I just kind of continued with the cutting, kept my head down, started being like really irregular with the meetings because I just couldn't handle it. Everything was overwhelming. And I believe it was the district or the regional convention of 2019. I remember being there, and it got to a point where like conventions and assemblies were awful for me too. So I remember like it would get to the point where I would like keep a razor blade in the back of my phone case, and I would like go in the bathroom in between sessions and cut just to like make it through. I remember at this huge stadium we were at, like all I could think about was like jumping and just getting it over with, because like I wasn't happy in the religion anymore. My mental health was in the toilet. So I remember it was that convention that I was just like, I can't do this anymore. At the end of the year, I'm gonna just go ahead and take my life. Because in my mind at that time, like everything was overwhelming. I was super unhappy. There was nowhere to turn. There was no help. At that point, I felt like even the place where I was supposed to fit in, I didn't fit in anymore because of everything that was going on. And I also knew that if I just like decided to leave of my own accord, like I would also have nothing. And just like with how sick I was, I couldn't imagine doing that at all. So just like committing suicide seemed like the best option at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sadly, you know, there are times where we get to the place where we think it's the only option, only viable option. I had those thoughts in my Jehovah's Witness career as well.
Yeah.
Disclaimer, there are other options.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And there are infinitely better options. Like, but I understand, you know, when you're in that place, it's hard to see those options clearly.
Yeah.
And the negative voice of depression and everything in a person's head, we can trust it and listen to it when we shouldn't be. But you know, everybody's doing their best. It's a sad situation, and I'm sorry that you got to that point. So did that, and so obviously the convention was not helping in any way. You know, these are just the things Jehovah's Witnesses look to, right? You have some sort of an issue, just go to the spiritual oasis, just go to the meeting, go to the convention, and you or just pray about it, and Jehovah will make it all better, as though there aren't Jehovah's Witnesses that believe that, you know, have lots of problems in their lives, or maybe they do take their own lives. I've known that to happen myself. They're all just people in the end, and they're hurting, and it's an emotional desert. There's nothing there for them. So I guess where do you go next? I mean, did you try to follow through on that?
So I decided I was going to do it in 2020. I made myself like a little bucket list. So like through the rest of 2019, I pretty much just like took out my life savings. I went and saw Niagara Falls. I went to Toronto for a couple of weeks with like my really close Jehovah's Witness friends at the time. I went and saw my favorite band that I had always wanted to see, which was like really expensive to do, but I was like, I'm gonna die anyway. Just like went to a lot of concerts, did some traveling, all of that, wanted to get that out of the way. There was a brother I was kind of seeing at the time, which that's like a whole other thing. So I like the weekend before I did it, I took 2 days and I just traveled all the way up the East Coast and like said goodbye to one of my best friends, which she's like physically and mentally out right now. But we've been together since we were like 13. So I said goodbye to her, went and said goodbye to this brother, came home, went to work, like hadn't slept at all throughout these like 72 hours, went to work, got off work early, went home and took an entire bottle of Excedrin. So I did follow through on my plan. I just wanted to get some stuff done first.
Actually, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk about the stuff you wanted to get done first, you actually went out and enjoyed life.
Because I was just like, this is stuff I've never gotten to do before. So yeah, I think those last like 6 months were just about me kind of trying to enjoy life as much as I could with how bad I was hurting.
Imagine had you been able to live a life where you got to, I'm not saying that, life is just concerts and fun all the time, but
Yeah.
imagine if you had had more balanced life, with things like experiences that actually gave something emotionally to you instead
Yeah.
of just taking from you at every moment until you had nothing left.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had a life where you got to connect to people and have amazing experiences, or even
Hmm.
mundane experiences that, would seem amazing in contrast to the life you had been living.
Yeah.
You clearly did want to live. You took the opportunity to live. You just didn't know how to deal with things. And I think that
Yeah.
for a lot of people, that's really sometimes what it is. We just don't know where to turn, and we feel out of options,
Hmm.
because we don't know any other. But
Hmm.
um, so you did turn to an attempt as an
Hmm.
option. You're obviously here talking with us today.
Hmm.
So what happened, if you care to elaborate?
My cat. So I hadn't seen him for 72 hours. And my plan was to OD and sit in the Dollar General parking lot because I'm like, nobody cares about me. Nobody's going to find me for weeks in my house. And then I don't want to like traumatize my neighbors when they find me because I lived in like a Jehovah's Witness commune. I lived in like a little trailer park and everyone in there was a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm.
So I was just like, it's best for me to just like do this out of the house. Someone will find me in the morning. Like, there you go, all taken care of, whatever. And I was like, oh, I gotta go home and like say goodbye to my cat. Like, I think I have some time before this kicks in, like just 5 minutes tops, and I'll be right back here. Because I live like 2 minutes away from the Dollar General. I went to say goodbye to my cat. And it makes me sound like I'm crazy, but he got in my lap and just like looked at me. And he's not a cuddly cat. And he just like curled up and started purring. And I was like, oh shit, I can't leave this cat. Cause like my mom had always told me, if anything happens to you, I hate this cat. Like I'm just gonna throw him out into the woods and he can fend for himself. Um, and I couldn't do that. So I looked at him and I was like, I can't go through with this. Like, what about my cat? Like, I forgot to tie up the one thing that means everything to me. So I tried driving myself to the hospital and I started like throwing up and like passing out and all that stuff was happening. And I called like 5 people and no one was picking up. And one of my friends wound up picking up the phone and they came and got me and delivered me to the psych ward. Obviously the
Well,
hospital first to like fix what I had done.
sure.
And then the psych ward.
Well, I'm glad that that there was somebody there who took that initiative. And again, you did have things to live for, like your cat.
Oh, I love him. He's just the sweetest little boy. Actually, he's not. He's evil, but I do love him.
But see, you can love something that is rotten.
Mm-hmm. That's
Right?
true. That's true. And I was the rotten kid and now I'm loved. So,
Mm-hmm.
which feels so weird to say. Like, I'm loved by people that like I met on my own and like they don't care about me because I'm a Jehovah's Witness. Like they care about me for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
how it's supposed to be.
I know, and that's crazy. Like I remember my best friend in the world, my best friend DJ, he's not a Jehovah's Witness, and I met him when I was still a witness. We worked at Chick-fil-A together. And I remember like he thought I just liked hanging out at nighttime. But we live right by the Blue Ridge Parkway, so I'd be like, "Hey, do you want to like go for a ride up on the parkway and we can like hang out?" He didn't realize I was like secretly hanging out with him. He thought I just liked going to weird places. Um, but I remember thinking to myself again, because that was like the beginning of the end of my time as a witness, just like, is this how it's supposed to be? Like, can you really just like go out and make friends with people? That's insane. That's so crazy.
Isn't it crazy that that is a crazy thought to us?
I know, because I remember when I was younger and I started like getting into the work world, being like, oh, that person's really cool. I wish they were a Jehovah's Witness so I could hang out with them. Like the thought never even occurred to me that I could just hang out with them.
Yeah. You can be friends with anybody. You don't have to agree with them on everything. You don't have
Yeah.
to have the same political stance, religious stance, whatever. You can, if you want to look for the good in people, it's there, and you can find good people to hang
Yeah.
out with. Obviously, there are unhealthy people anywhere. That's
Mm-hmm.
life. And there are people who may be particularly unhealthy for you or I or another person or
Mm-hmm.
their mental emotional makeup. For the most
Mm-hmm.
part, you can find good people out there that you can hang out with and that
Yeah,
care about you just for you. And they
absolutely.
don't need you to do a dance or perform or whatever as a cult member in order to
Yeah.
love you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, so you have this attempt,
Mm-hmm.
and you have come out of it on the other side, alive.
Mm-hmm.
You have gone to the hospital to a to be evaluated psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where do you go from there?
So I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks, because they had to deal with like not just the depression, but also realizing like, oh, this patient has DID and it's like never been addressed. So it was like a big adjustment period, getting on antipsychotics, getting on a really strong anti-anxiety medication along with an antidepressant. So I was in there for 3 weeks, just like adjusting to all of that, because that's a lot for your brain to take at once.
Mhm.
And then when I got out, I stayed with my parents for about 2 weeks, and I went into Region 10, which is like a great local facility. They have like rehabilitation centers in pretty much each county. Um, so I went into a rehabilitation center. And for me, that was an experience that changed my life. Like I was in there for a month and a half, I think. And that was my first time, like everyone who was in there was quote unquote like worldly. And you've been told your entire life, like worldly people are evil and all they care about is like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And like I met so many amazing people in there, people I could relate to because they were going through the same things. Realizing that like, hey, worldly people aren't evil. Like obviously there were some people in there I didn't get along with, but I just met some incredible people in there. And that's when I started to think like, how could Jehovah just kill these people? Like how is that something that he's going to be okay with doing? Because like these are lovely people who have the same feelings as me, the same struggles as me, and like we're all just trying to get by. Like just because they're not baptized as a Jehovah's Witness, like that was the first time I realized like I am not better than these people. Like there is absolutely no reason to not hang out with these people, to not love these people, to not like cherish these people. Like I don't know, that was just like a huge eye opener for me. And I remember too, I had a therapist in there. His name was Kyle. And, he was like a very openly gay man. And obviously I was a witness, so I was like a little homophobic. And the more sessions I had with him, the more I realized this is a lovely person. Like, again, how could Jehovah hate this man? And it got to the point where I became comfortable enough to talk about religion, because that was something I had avoided the entire time. And that was the first time I had like openly said, I'm in this religion and I think it might be a cult. So like rehab
you
was when
thought it might be a cult without even having done like a lot of, you just knew it had culty vibes, or
yeah. Well, because the first thing that gave me the clue is when I was in there and people would be like, oh, are you religious? And I'd be like, oh, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And they'd be like, oh. Like I got that reaction from everyone, just like the oh. And then kind of talking about, with the therapist, like, have you been to college? Like, oh no, I'm not allowed to go to college, actually. Like, oh, are you dating anyone? Oh, no, like, not actually allowed to do that. Or like, oh, what's your sexuality? And I'm like, oh, I'm not really allowed to like have that. So, and that was the point. And that was the point when I realized, like, I think I may be majorly stunted. I think I might be in a cult. So I remember my therapist that night gave me homework. He was like, I want you to go do research on cults. Like, I want you to see what like the main identifiers are of a cult. And I want you to see if they apply to you. I was like, okay. Like, I was really scared to do it. Like, all my rehab friends came and like sat with me at the computer while I started doing research.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah. And like, that was when I was just kind of like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, there's a reason I felt the way I felt for so long. Like, this is not a healthy religion. What am I doing? Yeah, that was insane. That was a really crazy day.
Oh, I can only imagine. Can I say, I love that the people that you first connected with and that helped you to realize how much you had been lied to about how terrible worldly people are,
Mm-hmm.
were people in rehab.
Mm-hmm.
These are people that sadly, can be ostracized, or people may look down upon.
Yeah.
And you saw what beautiful, amazing people they were. Had their issues, don't we all, in some way?
Yeah.
And you were able to see that and appreciate that and to connect with those people. And then I don't know, I just have this mental image of you sitting there at the computer, super nervous. I know how it was when I went on my first, apostate website.
Yeah.
And having this group of people from rehab around you while you're doing it, that's out of a movie. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is such a cool thing to have happened.
Yeah, I'm just like so grateful I had all of those wonderful, wonderful people by my side when I was like finally opening my eyes. Because like when I was a kid, there were periods of time where I'd be like, this thing kind of doesn't seem right. And I would like, I had access to the internet at a very young age. And there were times where I would like kind of stumble across like some apostate stuff, and I would read it and I would be like, oh, this is like really compelling. And then I'd be like, it's just Satan. Like, this is what Satan wants me to do. This is what Satan wants me to think. So it was always just immediately cut off with like, this is Satan's influence. I need to stop. So this was the first time I was able to really look with like an open mind without like being brainwashed and thinking like Satan is always out to get me. And I had all of these incredible people there just like kind of holding my hand and helping me through it.
Yeah, you had support while you were doing it. You weren't a 15-year-old kid terrified that mom and dad are going to notice that they went on a certain website or something like that, trying to hide your browser history or whatever the case may be, trying to see, what is this thing that I'm involved in? This doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense to me. You were not a lot older, but a little older, and had support there, and this was at the behest of your therapist. Shout out to Kyle, by the way. I'm glad
right.
that he helped. So you see this, you're reading this on the computer. How does that change things for you? Did you go talk to Kyle about that? Your therapist?
Yeah, I did. I kind of like, I had a notebook and I was just kind of like writing it all down. Like I was writing out like the main points of like how you identify a cult. And then I was kind of like writing out like the things that it applied to within the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was just kind of like, it changed my entire life. And I remember sitting in there and I remember talking to Kyle. And I remember saying, it's a cult. I get that now. I've done my research. Not to mention I've done research and seen like all of the sexual abuse that's hidden and the fact that they have like ties with the UN, which is really insane since we're not supposed to have any political affiliation. And I remember talking to him and being like, I realize this now, but if I leave, I'm going to lose everything. And I remember Kyle just looking at me and going, Mackenzie, in this religion, what do you really have? And I remember that just really hit me as like, I guess that's kind of true, because like you're made to feel like you have this stable foundation. But when you take a step back and look at it, like it's all fake. Like none of that is real. None of that's a real foundation. So the more I thought about it, the more I was like, what do I have? Like in the grand scheme of things, like I don't think I have anything here. Yeah, so that was really
that he asked you that question, because it is one of those. So acceptance means letting go of the hope that things could have been different. Mm-hmm. Many of us, even as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, are still thinking that we lost something.
Yeah.
And the reality is what we had wasn't much of anything.
Yeah.
That people, sadly, even our families, a lot of times there's an ideal version of them, mm-hmm. this hope that we're still mm-hmm. holding on to, that mom and dad could be the mom and dad we want them to be or need them to be, or that our friends could be the friends that we needed them to be, or mm-hmm. whatever. Because of course we would all like that.
Yeah.
But that's not who they are. And the longer we hold on to that hope that things could somehow be different, the more we stay stuck. When mm-hmm. you can really get to that place of acceptance and look the ugliness right in the eye and see it for what it is, sometimes it can really, again, the truth sets you free, right? So mm-hmm. the truth about that situation, looking at the realities and how stark they are, and that you really aren't losing a lot.
Yeah.
It feels like it but a lot of that is because of what we wish it was, or what it was supposed to have been, or what it could have been, or should have been, or we think would have been maybe someday if just the right thing happened. But sadly, it's just not.
Yeah.
And it is a big awakening for a lot of people when they can start to see things clearly for what they really were. Yeah. And I'm sorry, because it still doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
To look at those
it didn't. It was just like crazy to me, because not only were my eyes like suddenly opened, like, oh my God, I'm in a cult, but also like I had mental clarity for the first time since I was like 7 years old. So that just like, I think being on those meds, getting myself adjusted, I was finally able to like calmly take a look at this. Because I think in the back of my mind, I knew for a long time, but I just was dealing with so many other things. Like I could not deal with that too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know what it's going to cost you. Again, mm-hmm. what is it really going to cost you, I guess? But you know that it's going to cost you at least the illusion of certain mm-hmm. things, or the one thing that you're hoping in that might be. So you're resting your hopes there.
Yeah.
Even if it's not real. And so to lose all hope is a dark place to go to sometimes.
Yeah.
But he was helping ground you in some ways in that instant. And I'm glad that he asked you that question. I'm just sorry that the realities are what they are.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. But it was after that happened, once I got out of rehab, it took me a couple weeks, and that's when I started reaching out to people. So like I had a really good friend. His name is Zach. He's amazing. He was disfellowshipped twice. The second time was when he was like, okay, like I've done my own studies of the Bible. I don't think any of this is correct. I don't think any of this is interpreted correctly. So I remember reaching out to him. I remember texting him and him being like, you realize I'm disfellowshipped, right? And I said, yeah, that's actually why I'm texting you. So he's the first person I met up with. I went over to his house. I remember I parked in an apartment complex, like way away from his house, went in the dark of the night, wore a hoodie, like walked to his house, had drinks with him, talked with him. That kind of put me at ease a little bit. And then, interestingly enough, so my mom has 6 siblings, and 4 of them were disfellowshipped or dissociated themselves before I was even born. So I was able to find them on Facebook, and I reached out to them next.
So these are that was aunts and uncles and such.
My aunts and my uncles, and I have a lot of cousins that I like didn't know about. But that was like really exciting for me too, because I am so much like them. Like the only other time I had gotten to meet these people was at my grandpa's funeral. And I remember being like very drawn to them then, because like my Aunt Linda Lee and we are like 2 peas in a pod. That's like a relationship I'm so grateful that I get to have now. But like the more I started reaching out, the more I realized like how much support I was going to have once I left. Like it wasn't going to be a total loss. There are people out there, and even people that I hadn't met yet. So that was when I really started kind of like evaluating the situation and kind of like doing a little toe dip into like, oh, I'm talking to disfellowship people
and worldly people.
Yeah, and worldly people.
Ooh.
It was crazy. It was crazy time.
Talking to people, that's crazy.
I know, right? How could I? Satan wants me to talk to those people.
So how did it feel? I mean, not only did you knew you were going to have support, but I assume, was it validating for you in many ways?
Absolutely. It was absolutely validating. And both of my uncles that I had talked to had actually been elders in the congregation, very strong people in the congregation, and being able to talk to them and to kind of hear about what goes on behind the scenes and like their reasons for leaving also kind of helped me validate like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not crazy. I have actually been brainwashed. This is actually what's going on. It was like very validating for me and like reassuring.
So you're learning that you're not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to see the truth about the truth, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You're starting to understand that you're not alone if you are to leave. Mm-hmm. Where do you go from there?
So I remember I got another therapist. His name was Sam. Sam was incredible. Like, I owe so much to that man. He helped me through a lot. I remember got my therapist, started talking about religion with him. And, you know, I kind of got the courage to be like, okay, I'm still going to stay in for now, but I'm going to like go off on the side. Because that was when COVID had started anyway. So like that made it really easy to kind of like take a step back and kind of try some things out. So the first thing I did was download Tinder. Because I had like never been on a real date, and like you are not allowed to explore your sexuality at all, especially as a sister in the congregation. Like, because you know you're taught to believe like all men want is sex, and like once you get married, like you're like I was always told you're not going to enjoy it at all, but like it's your marital due or whatever. But like women aren't supposed to enjoy sex, not supposed to have a sexuality, and that was something that I wanted to like explore for myself. So that's kind of like the first thing I did. Kind of like messed around with some people for a while, which, you know, doesn't sound like very classy, but I think it's like something I needed to do to kind of start to like discover who I am as a person. Because I think like now I realize that like sexuality is a big part of who we are as like human beings. Like it plays a big role in like our personality and our lives. And that's something that's like so squished down as a Jehovah's Witness. So that was a big eye opener for me. That had only gone on for a couple weeks before I got outed. And that was really awful.
So what happened?
Oh gosh. Okay. So it was the 4th of July, and I was up in the mountains with some friends. And I had been doing what Jehovah's Witnesses love to do best. I was doing some gossiping. Um, and I was also just kind of talking about like what I was going through myself and like some of the things I had been experiencing. And there happened to be another XJW up there, which like I'm not completely not guilty in this situation because we had been like doing some gossiping about this person, um, which is what initially made her start recording me. And I did not know like she was right behind me. And I never knew she was there, but she recorded everything that was said. And the next morning I woke up and it was all over my social media because, you know, like bad news in the witnesses travels like wildfire. Like people love to talk, especially when it's something scandalous.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're saying she went on like Facebook or something.
Yeah.
And did she post the recording or did she just?
Yeah. She posted the video on Facebook and on Instagram.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. So she did that publicly. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. Made it a public post, posted it on there. It took like maybe 3 hours before I got a call from my sister who was like, is this true? And I was like, I don't know, maybe, because like the gist of what I had said in the video, I hadn't exactly revealed what I had been doing, but I did say like, I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. I'm working towards fading. Like, this is just not something I want to do. And my sister found out because the girl directly contacted my sister for some reason. And then my sister called me to her house, kind of chewed me out for it, gave me back all the gifts I had ever given her and everything, kicked me out, took my house key, and then called the elders.
So this initial girl who outed you, she was just mad because you had talked about her behind her back some, or do you think she was also mentally in and, you know, trying to do the J-Dub thing and reporting people? Or do you think she just reported you? She was like, you're going to talk stuff about me. I'm going to wreck your life.
Yeah, it was definitely that, which like she got a lot of flack from like the other XJWs in the area that I had been talking to. Like she pretty much lost all of them as friends because they were like, you just ruined her life. Like she was not ready to do that yet. Like not completely ruined my life, but like that just threw a wrench into all of my plans. Like that was to have that control taken away from me was unexpected and very upsetting.
Yeah, she brought a gun to not to a knife fight. She brought a gun to a tickle fight. You all could have, if she had a problem with you, you all could have just talked about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
She didn't need to go light a match and put a bomb under your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is a pretty extreme thing to do.
Yeah.
If you got a problem with somebody, just talk to them about it. Or
absolutely, but that
flip
is
them
not
off or
yeah.
Whatever,
I don't know. She did the witness reaction, which is like, oh, someone's doing something wrong. I gotta go tell the elders. I gotta, because you always go to the higher up. Like that's how it works.
Well, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it almost feels like to take it that far. It just makes me feel like she might still be mentally in a little bit on some level. But I mean, whatever the case, so she just, whatever plans you had for your life or your fading process or whatever you were going to do just got obliterated.
Yep. Absolutely. So like I was made to meet with the elders that week. And it was I'm so thankful because my one friend who is like physically and mentally out, drove all the way from where she lives. She lives like a state away. And she sat in the car throughout my 8-hour judicial meeting.
8 hours?
8 hours.
8 hours of what?
So I had asked them if I could bring my therapist with me, if he could be present, because this was obviously like a really stressful situation, and I was still very early on in my recovery process. And so I knew, like, I'm going to dissociate, like I'm going to switch out during this, and there's going to be no one there like qualified to help with that. And they just kind of brushed it under the rug and were like, yeah, you're not really allowed to have like outside people in here during this. Sorry. So a lot of that was me like switching and like dealing with the different personalities. Like there's a lot of it I don't remember. I do remember like kind of switching, and I remember coming back in, because when it happens, it's like I'm asleep and someone else is awake. Like I don't really remember it. And I remember like coming back to them praying over me. And it was so crazy to me because like first they were asking like creepy questions, and I also had a boyfriend at the time, and I was like, I'm not willing to break up with him. You know, and then like their whole demeanor changed when they decided they were going to disfellowship me. Because it went from like, Jehovah loves you so much, and like, we love you so much, and we just want you to repent and like come back to the congregation and like do what's right and like stop having evil sex and smoking weed. Like, that's so bad, but Jehovah loves you. And then as soon as they decided to disfellowship me, one brother was literally like, you're disgusting. What you're doing is disgusting to us and in the eyes of Jehovah. And like, how could you? And just, it was rough. That was really bad. Like, that was a whole other bucket of trauma. Like, how could you do that to someone when you see like they are clearly struggling mentally very hard through all of that, and you just keep pushing it for 8 hours straight? Like, that was bad.
I think again what you see there is that they're lovely when you're on their side, and the second that you're no longer with them, you are against them.
Well, and at this point I had moved out of my congregation with my parents. This was a different congregation that I had moved to because they had a Swahili group there, and I was like kind of interested in pursuing that. So these were like not the elders that I grew up with or knew super well. Still not an excuse for them to be terrible.
No, and sadly, what many do find, though, is that the people that they thought were their friends end up being terrible.
Yeah.
When you no longer do the one thing that they see as acceptable.
Yeah. And it just like, it was so crazy to me because it was always like, if you get disfellowshipped, it's like a loving arrangement from Jehovah, and like the elders just want to help you. Judicial meetings aren't scary. And it was like very personal, private questions about my sex life that nobody had any business asking. And then just immediately being told like, I'm disgusting, I'm an outcast, I'm getting shunned.
Can we say that those questions are sexual abuse in and of themselves?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, they're 50-year-old men have no business asking a 23-year-old girl about her sex life, and just like really intimate questions too. Like, what positions did you do? How many times did you do it? How many people have you slept with? Like, did you come? Just like all kinds of creepy stuff. That's, I'm like, why is that necessary in deciding my fate in the congregation? Like, would it be less bad if I didn't enjoy it? Like, it didn't make sense. Well, those questions make no sense.
It's just so abusive, and it's so controlling, and it's all there to shame you and just make you feel as terrible as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And then they denied someone with DID the option to have their therapist there.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about that.
Yeah.
They denied someone who already is struggling in certain ways the opportunity to have actual help. They were literally denying you help. So how can they say that they're there to help when they're literally denying you the opportunity to have help?
Well, because Jehovah's help is all you need, obviously.
Oh, he's so loving.
So loving.
So
So loving. So loving.
So I guess at the end of the day, it sounds like they went ahead and told you you were going to be disfellowshipped right then and there, but you say you had a friend waiting for you?
Yeah, a friend waiting for me in the car. We went out and we got chocolate cake, and I cried for about 3 hours, went back to my home, had my boyfriend over, and then I was like, you know what? The news is going to get out anyway. So I just had like all of the disfellowship people I had been hanging out with over to my house.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lean into it.
Yeah. Because I was like, you know what? Time to start making new friends. Like,
yeah.
It's a cat's out of the bag now. Like, and that was a big deal because I lived in that Jehovah's Witness like commune. So when I tell you people were like driving by slow and like looking in my windows, that is not an exaggeration because they were all very, very nosy.
So did you tell anybody that you were going to be disfellowship? Because usually what is there, like you have a week to appeal and then they announce it?
Yeah. I told my parents obviously first, and then I told my grandmother on my mom's side over text because she is not the best to talk to. And she just texted me and was like, well, do you love me? And I was like, obviously I do. And she was like, well, if you really loved me, you wouldn't be doing this. If you really loved me, you wouldn't be leaving Jehovah. And I was like,
because it's really all about her.
Oh, it's all about her. It's all about Princess Grandma and Princess Mom. Like, that's what my life was growing up.
Is
so
Princess Grandma the mother of Princess Mom?
Yes.
Of course.
Absolutely. Absolutely she is. And then I remember Mom hugging me, and the last thing she said to me, which this hurt so bad because I was so close with my grandfather. I loved that man like the light of my life, took such great care of me. One of the safe spaces I had. And she just hugged me and said to me, don't make me tell Grandpa why you died in Armageddon. And those were the last words to me from my mom. And then, you know, my grandma Connie, she's like very northern and like is positive about everything. So she was just like, it's nice. You're going to come back. It's good. We still love you. It'll be nice, which like she doesn't have any communication with me either, but the goodbye with her wasn't as painful as it was with my mom and grandma, who made me feel like a piece of shit.
Yeah, they tried to extort you emotionally. Mm-hmm. That's emotional extortion. They were trying to make you feel terrible so that you would do what they wanted.
Yeah,
that's manipulative. It's a tool of a narcissist. It's a horrible thing to do to another person.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's just like, it's so crazy because again, you're taught your whole life, like God is love, Jehovah is love, and this is the true religion. And you're just like, if this is really the truth, like when I was at the point of getting disfellowshipped, I'm like, why do you have to shun me and take everything away from me to make me come back? Like, if it's the truth, shouldn't it like speak for itself? And that's what makes me want to come back. Like, this is just manipulation at this point. It's not a loving punishment. It's manipulation and gaslighting. Like, that's what disfellowshipping is.
100%. If it's the truth, then why should they have to emotionally extort you and weaponize your family to make you come back? Many people who go back, it's simply for their families. There's not love of Jehovah. They just miss mom and dad or their son or their daughter or their grandkids, or there's somebody there that they're wanting to see, and that's why they go back.
Yeah.
Or they feel shame about who they are because they've been shamed their whole life for who they are. But you see how abusive it is. So did you go to the announcements, or did you just peace out on it after you talked to the few people that you needed to talk to?
I talked to the few people I needed to talk to. I did tie into the Zoom meeting where I was disfellowshipped, just because I felt like it would give me some closure to like actually hear that announcement being made. So I did do that. And again, like my very good friend DJ came and sat with me while the announcement was made. And then, yeah.
What was that like? I never, I mean, they weren't having Zoom meetings back then.
Yeah.
It would have been hard for me to get the line to listen to mine if I wanted. How did it feel to listen to it? Would you, I'm sure everyone has their own feelings around that. For you, was that a good experience or a bad experience? Are you glad you did it or not?
It was bittersweet. I'm glad I did it. It was like, it's always hard to close a chapter of your life, especially when it's such a big chapter of your life. Because, the human mind has a tendency to romanticize the past. So, I was going through a really hard time. Most of that was terrible. But I do think of like some of my friends that I really loved, or like my dad or my grandma that I was really close with. But at the end of the day, like, it was kind of a relief to hear the announcement. Like, sad because I'm going to miss these people, but just like, it's finally over. Like, it makes me think of, there's this song, I forget who it's by, but it's called Waiting for My Real Life to Begin. And I feel like that moment was when my real life started. So.
Well, 100%. I feel the same way. When I disassociated, I didn't get to hear the announcement.
Yeah.
But getting the confirmation that it was announced as the few remaining Jehovah's Witnesses fled from our Facebook profiles and blocked us, it was just, there was a freedom there of, I don't have to ever look over my shoulder. I don't have to care about these people. Like, these people aren't going to call me anymore. This is done. There's no elders that are going to be showing up randomly at my doorstep trying to talk to me. It's just done. And it's the first day of the rest of your life at that point. And there's some freedom to that. It's not so easy. Freedom is never free, but it comes at a price, but it's nice to have.
Well, because you're told, like, when you get baptized, this is the most important day of your life. And it turned out breaking that vow would come to be the most important day of my life, for sure.
Do you know your shunniversary date?
Oh gosh,
I just wondering. I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I know it was August of last year. I don't remember the exact date that it happened, but I know it was early August of 2020.
Gotcha. So that is done. That chapter certainly closed or took a drastic turn on that day.
Yeah.
Is that the last you ever heard from anyone?
I still see my mom occasionally because she works at the shop I get my car worked on. And it's always like dirty looks, but it's kind of weird because I went in with my boyfriend the other day, and he was like, it's so weird because just like, you can tell she wants to talk to you. Like, you can tell she's curious about your life and how you're doing. And it's so weird to watch. Which I can't even imagine from someone who like was not raised that way, how weird that must be. Other than that, like, I did have it when I first got disfellowshipped, it was rough. It was a very lonely 6 months. I did kind of like relapse when it came to my mental health, and definitely had some struggles with that again. But I did hear from my dad at one point because I was at work and I had a dissociative episode, and they didn't know what to do, but they knew my mom and dad. So they called my dad, and he came and got me. And he was like very sweet and kind, and like drove me around for a while. And then my mom called him and was like, what are you doing? You can't just baby her all the time. She can't come crying to us like every time there's something wrong. So he drove me back and dropped me off at my car, and my boss wound up taking me home with her. So I've had like a few like little conversations kind of like peppered into the last year, but nothing meaningful.
Sad that your dad seems to have the ability for empathy and your mom has
Mhm.
none.
Yeah.
Um,
My mom has my dad on a very tight leash.
uh,
I mean, she's a narcissist, so she likes to control whatever she can, even when it comes down to like my dad's relationship with his children. Like, mom was very weirdly jealous of us when we were kids. And it got to the point where like we found this out in rehab where she would tell dad, "Oh yeah, Mackenzie doesn't like you. She really doesn't want to spend time with you." And then she would tell me, "Hey, your dad is frustrated with you and doesn't really like being around you." And that like ruined our relationship for a long time. And then we found out like, oh, that was just mom saying that. Oh, okay, whatever. So I wish he could have learned from that and really kind of like do what he wants to do. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure he's still an elder. I don't think he's stepped down. So, it's all about maintaining the image at the end of the day.
sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. And whatever, there's something they're getting out of it all right now.
Yeah. Oh, my
Like,
mom is getting boatloads of attention from me being
oh, I
dysfunctional.
guarantee you.
She had given a comment at the meeting because one of my friends, a girl I used to babysit, she was going to leave when she turned 18. So she kind of like kept me in like the know on certain things and people.
Hmm.
And very recently, after I had been disfellowshipped, she made the comment at a meeting that things would have been better off if I had gone through with the suicide. That would have been less painful than me leaving Jehovah.
Wait a minute. When you say she made the comment at the meeting, do you mean raised her hand and made a
Yeah.
comment?
Yeah.
Yikes. I
Yeah.
don't
Right.
see how that is I mean, even by Jehovah's Witness standards.
Yeah. But of course everyone was like, "Oh yes, we understand. It would have been it would have been easier if she had died faithful than left the
So,
organization." Yeah.
so now your mom is the martyr. She gets all the attention.
Oh
The
my god,
play gets
boatloads
to
of
be centered on her. You're
Oh,
the
it's her favorite thing. I did the
yeah,
woman a
yeah, yeah.
favor, honestly. I'm not in her way anymore and she gets lots of attention off of me. It's her dream.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what about you? So you've left now. So you've been out for what, a year and 4 months or so.
Yeah.
Um, in that time, uh, is there anything, what has helped you, I guess, on your journey of healing as you've gotten out? Like, has there been any resources or anything that helped you wake up? Because it's one thing to leave, but it's another, and,
Mm-hmm.
and to know a little bit about cults, but it's another thing to really start working through
Yeah.
everything about Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
Have there been things that have helped you or anything that you learned in particular that made a difference to you?
The John Cedars channel
Mm-hmm.
has been something that's really interesting to kind of watch and dig into. I am not a religious person. At this point in my life, I do not identify with like Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I have gone to like different churches just to kind of like see what's out there and
Sure.
see how other people interpret it, which I think has been like really interesting for my growth and my closure. Another thing, like listening to this podcast and like other firsthand experiences of people who have been through the same thing I've been through, um, has been really helpful just to know that like I'm not alone. Um, and just like people in general, like I had such an overwhelming amount of people like from my job who really reached out and like helped me through what I was going through and kind of like showed me a normal life, quote unquote. Yeah, so just a combination of like the people and the different resources that are out there have been things that are really helpful.
Can I ask, so how did those people know to show you a quote normal life? So you must have
So,
told them what was going on and been open on some level?
yeah, so I work for FedEx. I'm a FedEx driver. Um, but the way FedEx works is you have like your independent contractors and they like buy out routes. So I work for like a fairly small contractor. There's like maybe 15, 20 of us. And I remember training with my manager And I started that job the week I was getting disfellowshipped. So, you know, she was just making chit chat about like, what's your life like? What's your family like? And I just kind of opened up about that. And she told like the CEO of the company, and they were all just like, oh my God. And they just like took me in as their own. Like no questions asked, just they, you know, they technically gave me my first Christmas, my first Thanksgiving. Like they've become like my parents. Like I call them mom and dad. I can reach out to them whenever I need to. They've been such a big help. And then my friends Cassie and Lauren, I call them the gay moms because they're gay and they have children. It's just like a thing. But they've really like taken me under their wing too. I remember like I got kicked out of where I was living, obviously. And I was like, how am I going to move? I have no people. And they showed up with 2 FedEx trucks and just like all of my coworkers. Just stuff like that, where like these people had just met me and they all absolutely had my back. And that was really special.
And they didn't want anything in return.
Nope. Didn't want anything in return. It was kind of funny though, because the Jehovah's Witnesses, like they were all related, the ones that lived there. So they would like walk the park every morning because it was like a circular neighborhood. And I remember Cass and Lauren getting out of the car and like screaming like, oh, we're super gay. And like, what's up, bitch tits? Just like to make them uncomfortable so they would leave us alone while they were moving. It was really funny. They caused quite a riot for sure, but it was funny. It was worth it.
I love that they just owned who they were and used it.
Yeah.
To, you know, if you don't like this, go away.
Yeah, and these are the
I
people
also
like
I love that. So, first of all, you are vulnerable to someone who was healthy. Yeah. And when you're vulnerable in the right way in front of someone who is healthy, then they will be happy to help. And, you know, secondarily, I love that you were able to accept that help, and that, you know, I hope you didn't feel a need to pay them back, because people just doing things for other people because they want to is a really beautiful thing that happens even in the old wicked system of things. It's
even
under
in Satan's
control.
wicked system. Mm-hmm. Yeah. At first I kind of felt guilty because I was still kind of at the stage where you're like, I was okay with leaving. I knew it was what I needed to do, but you still have that guilt of like, am I doing something wrong? So I was just kind of like, I'm a bad person. I'm doing everything wrong. Like, why are these people helping me? But over time I like warmed up and was like, okay, like they love me for me. They're helping because they're good people. Like, this is what I need right now. Like the universe somehow brought us together kind of
and
thing.
Because
so
you're
I was
not
eventually able to accept it. Huh?
And because you're not a bad person.
I'm slowly learning that. I do think like, because I was talking to my aunt the other day who's still in, but she like still talks to me. And she was kind of like, why don't you just come back? Like the family misses you, whatever. And I was just like, you have no idea like how much healing I've been able to do from taking a step back from that. Like the first 6 months being out was really, really rough. Like I did wind up hospitalized again. You know, I did lose my therapist. I did have a lot of stuff that like went down. The self-harm did kind of get worse for a while. But it taught me that like I can be on my own. Like I got kicked out of my house. I was jobless. I got a great job. I'm amazing at my job. I got myself an apartment. Like I made friends. I paid my bills. I did what I had to do. And I was able to like make time and like go to the hospital and get on the right meds to the point where like I feel better now than I have ever felt before. And I think a lot of that has to do with, because when you're in that controlling of an environment, like you can't do what you need to do. You can't heal in that environment. It's impossible. Like you cannot get better in that environment. You can't
heal in dysfunction.
Absolutely not.
Is there anything that, if you had a chance to say anything to anyone in particular or just to everyone that you left behind, is there anything you would say?
I love them. I wish the best for them. I wish it didn't have to be this way, but just because I am out here doing what I need to do and living my life the way I need to live it doesn't mean I don't care about them. A religious difference, in my mind, doesn't make or break a relationship. So like, even if there's certain people I have to love from afar, I haven't forgotten them. I still like hold them near and dear, and I'll always probably think of them, but like, I'm not being selfish. I'm taking care of me. And I just want, like, if there are any people out there listening to this who are like physically in, mentally out, whatever their circumstance may be, it is okay sometimes to be selfish and take care of you. Like, it is okay to do that. It's okay to take a step away.
Yeah. First of all, you're not the one shunning them. They're the ones shunning you. It's not your fault. It's their fault. They're the ones with the narrow, intolerant beliefs that don't allow them to accept you, not you.
Yeah. There were some people, though, that like I did really love. Like, I did have some really good friends. And I know in their mind, it's me choosing the world over them. And like, I just hope they wake up to the point or realize that like, they're the ones shunning me. I'm not shunning them. I still love them. I'm not doing this because I don't.
Absolutely. And, you know, the definition Jehovah's Witnesses use of selfish is distorted, that anything that you would do to take care of yourself is selfish. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's not selfish to take care of yourself. You can't give from an empty cup. You can't help anybody else when you're run down. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah. And it's okay to take care of yourself. Like, believe it or not, that's allowed.
It's not only allowed, it's a basic foundation of human existence. We are supposed to take care of ourselves. It's a building block. It's something we should have been taught how to do from the time we were children. But all we were taught was how to take care of a cult, how to take care of other people's feelings, how to not stumble others while no one cared about us.
Yeah.
So no, it's a wonderful thing to take care of your own mental and emotional health. If you're involved in something and it makes you want to not be here anymore, it can't be that good.
Yeah.
It can't be that good for you. So I'm glad that you're taking care of yourself, and that you have the freedom to take care of yourself. Isn't that
I know. It's weird to say.
That's a sad statement on the state of affairs of Jehovah's Witnesses, that you're not free to take care of yourself. Now you are.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing. So in taking care of yourself, I guess, what do you love about your life today? What's good? And is there anything that you want for the future that you're working toward?
Right now I have an amazing roommate. We met at a bar, and he like immediately became one of my best friends. You know, he moved in with me when I lived in a 1-bedroom because he was like, you're not going to be alone. You're going through it. Like, we're going to get to know people, you know, we're going to get out there. You're going to start living a normal life. So I'm like really thankful for him. I'm really thankful for living with people and like having friends. My boyfriend, he is incredible. We got together when I first left the Witnesses and then broke up for a while. I needed time to work on myself. We're back together now. We're doing amazing. I'm so grateful for the people in my life that love me for me. Like, that is the best feeling in the world, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, like that just means everything to me, that people like me for me. Like, that's the one thing I've learned, is that like, I am likable, I am lovable, I'm a badass, like, and I would never have known that if I was still a Jehovah's Witness. Like, I wouldn't have learned that about myself. So I'm really thankful for that.
I think that is the perfect place to leave this interview, that you now like yourself, and that you understand and can see that other people like you just for you. You don't have to be somebody else for them. And I'm sure that the people who listen to or watch this will like you as well, just for who you are, and who you've put yourself out there. Obviously, they don't know you fully, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that you took the time to do this and that you're sharing yourself and your story with the world so that you can help other people out there. That is a pretty badass thing to do too. So good for you.
Thank you. You're a badass too. We're all badasses here.